Hey friends, it's Jessica from Three Rivers Homestead, and I actually had a different video planned for today, but as you can imagine, life with 8 children and a busy homestead gets very crazy sometimes for Adam and I, and so I wasn't able to film the video that I had planned. So instead, I wanted to take today as an opportunity to catch up on my comments and messages. I appreciate every comment that you guys leave on my videos, and I try as hard as I can to read them all. And what I do is on my app, the comments come up and I read through them and I give them a heart as soon as I read them to show you that I've read them and I appreciate them. If there's a question that takes a little extra time for me to answer, if at the moment when I'm reading that question I don't have the time to give it a thoughtful response like I want to, I skip it in the intention of coming back later and answering it for you. But that doesn't always happen, and so I have a backlog of unanswered questions that I really wanted to answer for you guys and just haven't gotten to. So that is where I found the questions for the Q&A that I'm going to do today. All of these questions came from comments on previous YouTube videos, and they're just things that I really wanted to give a thoughtful answer to when somebody asked them and just didn't have the time at the moment. So we're going to talk about everything here from, let me see what's on my list, food allergies, picky eaters, losing baby weight, dealing with burnout, homeschooling, things like screen time, all sorts of things. I'm going to see how many of these that I can get to today, and let's go ahead and get started. All right, so let's go ahead and dive in. If you haven't been here on our channel for the long haul since the beginning, this is a question that I've covered in previous videos, but I get asked a lot by newer subscribers. So a lot of people want to know, were Adam and I raised the way that we're raising our children? And if we weren't, how did we learn the skills that we have now? And so the short answer to that is no, we were not raised this way. Adam and I both grew up in the same hometown, kind of a typical Midwestern suburban lifestyle. We both went to public school, the same public school actually. Adam graduated 5 years ahead of me. We didn't know each other when we were in school. We met later on when we were in our 20s through a mutual friend. But anyways, we were both very involved in extracurricular activities as children. Adam played basketball, even at the collegiate level. I was a dancer. I actually studied dance in college, and those were our passions and what we spent the majority of our time doing. We were raised in neighborhoods, and that was just how we did life. How we ended up where we are now, I'm not quite sure. Life circumstances brought us to where we are now. When we first got married, moved to a suburban neighborhood where in our hometown where we both went to school, and we thought that that's where we would raise our children in that neighborhood. They would go to the same school that we both graduated from, and then we had our first child who had anaphylactic food allergies, and it sort of shaped the rest of our lives. We quickly realized that a public school experience wouldn't look the same for him with his very severe anaphylactic food allergies. And that we would consider homeschooling him mainly due to those food allergies. And then through time, we discovered other reasons we wanted to homeschool our children. But I would say that the food allergies were the main catalyst. And then the food allergies were also what led us to homesteading. The food allergies and also my own health issues with my Crohn's disease and trying to heal myself through diet. Food, when you're buying specialty, dairy-free, allergy-free foods and things, can be very expensive. And we kind of reached a point where as our family was growing, it didn't make sense to have to buy all of that food in the store if there was a way that we could raise it for a fraction of the cost. And that's sort of what pushed us into homesteading. There were some things like canning. Adam was canning food when I met him, so he taught me those skills. Both of us had mothers who had canned a little bit when we were younger, but it wasn't to the level that we do now. It was more like 1 or 2 maybe canning projects a year that I remember my mom doing. She would make some strawberry jam and maybe can some tomato sauce or things like that. So it wasn't anything that I really learned from her. I had to learn as an adult. I didn't even really know how to cook when I met Adam. He taught me how to make rice. I just wasn't involved with that. I was so busy, as I mentioned, with extracurricular activities when I was younger. I wasn't really home enough for my mother to teach me things like baking and cooking and things. So I learned it as I was going. You know, it's same thing with gardening and animal husbandry and everything else that we're doing. You know, we live now in an age of social media where there are courses you can take and you can watch YouTube videos. You know, when we started out, none of that was available. I took books from the library. I read everything I could from the library on gardening. I went to Weston Price meetings to learn about nutrition and how to ferment foods and how to make sourdough and all of those kinds of things. I just, you know, reached out to people around me and they helped me out. And I think that was a big catalyst for me wanting to teach others on social media, that there were so many people that poured into me and helped me along my journey. And there were these wonderful resources out there. I wanted to share what I had learned from them in the hopes of helping other people who were kind of on a similar path. So all that to say, no, we did not have a similar childhood, and we just kind of ended up here. A couple quick questions. One was, what do I use to edit videos? I don't really discuss this here much. I've talked about it on Instagram before, but I do everything, all of my filming and editing from my phone, and it isn't even a fancy phone. It's a really cheap $170 Android phone, and that's what I use to film all of my videos. And then I have an app downloaded on it called Viva Video, and that's where I edit the videos and record all of my voiceovers, and it gets the job done. It's nothing fancy, but if you've ever wondered why the quality of the pictures or the lighting or looks, you know, the way it does, it's because I'm doing all of this just from my phone that I use every day. And it's pretty amazing that you can do things like this from this little computer in your hand now, you know, without any fancy equipment. So that is what I use. Another question that I get quite often, that's just a quick one: where do you get your skirts and dresses? Someone mentioned even the garden hat that you've seen me wearing in a lot of my videos. Well, my dresses, a lot of them since I had my daughter Hannah, are nursing dresses. Dresses are my favorite thing to wear. They're the most comfortable for me and the most practical. When you've had, you know, I'm trying to think how many pregnancies have I had now, 12 pregnancies in 16 years, and your weight is fluctuating back and forth. Pants really aren't the most practical thing to wear, but dresses are a little more forgiving with weight fluctuations. But the problem when you're nursing a baby is that it's hard to nurse a baby in a dress unless it has a button front. So I wised up finally with my 8th baby and purchased nursing dresses. And that's what you've seen me in for most of the videos since Hannah has been born. Most of them come from companies like Latched Mama, Nursing Queen, and then Amazon has some. The one I'm wearing today, this is from Amazon. It's a nursing dress, and they've been such a blessing to me, and that's what you typically see me wearing. Same with my hat that you see me wearing. It came from Amazon as well, and so that's where I wear a lot of that. Along that same line, someone talked about losing baby weight, and if I could do a video on how I lose baby weight. And I didn't want to do a dedicated video on that, but I thought I would answer that in this Q&A. As I mentioned, lots of weight fluctuations for me over the year. I have 8 living children. I've had 2 late first trimester miscarriages in which I've gained, you know, 10 or more pounds before losing the baby, and then I've had to take that weight off. And I've also had some earlier first trimester miscarriages. So a lot of hormonal things going on, lots of gaining and losing weight over the years. And I will say that I had a couple babies in my 20s. I had most of the rest of them in my 30s. And then I'm 42 right now with a 6-month-old baby. And the babies that I had in my 20s, breastfeeding alone was enough to just make the weight fall right off. It was great. Usually by the time I was 6 to 9 months postpartum, I was back to my pre-pregnancy weight. Got a little different through my 30s. The more children I had and the older I got, I think my hormones changed and shifted, and breastfeeding alone wasn't enough to lose the weight. And in fact, I found with the last 2 or 3 babies that I can't lose any weight while I'm breastfeeding. I will lose 10 or 15 pounds right after I have the baby, and we'll have that initial weight loss, and then nothing. I will lose nothing for the remainder of my breastfeeding experience until we wean. And with my last baby, Benjamin, it was crazy. I weaned him, and then literally the week after I weaned him, I lost like 5 pounds. It's like my body, finally the hormones shifted to the point where it was like, we can let go of this weight. And it is what it is. Right now, the baby takes priority, and making milk for her is what is best for her. And when I wean, typically somewhere between their first birthday and 18 months is when that has happened. Then I will focus on losing the baby weight. As far as how to do that, like I mentioned, while you're nursing, if you exercise too much, if you restrict calories too much to try to lose the weight, your milk supply will take a hit, and might not be the best thing to do. So it's just patience. And then once we do wean, focusing on just eating good whole foods in good portions and trying to remain active. That's what I do, and usually I'm able to lose the weight, but it can be very frustrating. It's hard to hold on to that weight, and but it's what's best for the baby, so we just try to be patient. We'll nurse her, and then it will come off later. So I wish I had, more advice, but I'll just say hormones are what they are. If you're nursing your baby and you're not losing weight, that's probably why. Hang in there, and once you wean, you can lose that weight. Here's another interesting one. Thoughts on screen time. I got several comments about that over the course of the last several videos. People want to know, do we have a TV in our house? What are my thoughts on that? There are a lot of families that take different approaches on this topic. Some people have a no screen rule altogether, all the way to the other end where people think that, children should have free access to that and learn how to limit that on their own. We probably fall somewhere in the middle. We do have TVs in our house. We do not have cable. We don't even have home internet. If we want to use the internet, we use hotspots off of our phone. So we don't have any kind of streaming services, Netflix, anything like that. If we want to watch TV, it's with old-fashioned rabbit ears plugged into the back of the TV, and we can get things like PBS and all of the major networks on TV. And we use that to watch things like America's Funniest Home Videos. We watch that every Sunday as a family and pop popcorn, and it's like one of our family traditions that we do. Other than that, if we're going to watch TV, it's with DVDs. We have a collection of children's DVDs and family movies for the little ones, and a collection of, stuff that's geared more toward the teenagers that are, TV series and some movies. And we do watch those, typically in the evenings a few times a week. As far as other types of screens, video games and pads and things, most of my older children have laptops and pads and stuff. They're not hooked up to the internet, but they do use them for both school-related things and, non-academic things. My oldest son is actually studying to be a computer programmer, so he spends quite a bit of his free time coding and learning about coding on his computer. I always thought I would be the mother that would limit screens and not have a child sitting in front of a screen all day. And then my oldest decided that that's what he wanted to do with his life. And you know what? We make our plans, but the Lord determines our steps. That is what my son's passion is. And so he's staring at a screen a lot. And you know what? We use screens for tools to reach our goals and to learn things. I don't think they're inherently evil or terrible for children. I think with moderation and with, screening things for your children to make sure that what they're consuming is appropriate, they can be a great tool and they benefit our family. So that's kind of where we stand on that issue. Okay, someone else recently asked, how could I do everything that I do now when I only had one child? And I posted a day in the life video recently of what my life was like when I had 4 kids age 5 and under, and it's in my day in the life playlist. But my life looked very different when I had only small children, and it looked different in many ways. I worked a part-time job outside of the home up until I had my 4th child. When my daughter Elizabeth was about a year old, I quit working full-time because I needed to start focusing on homeschooling, and it was just getting too hard to juggle a job with all of the children. We also lived in a neighborhood. We moved to this current homestead when I was pregnant with my 5th child. So a lot of the things like the size of the garden that we have now, the animal chores and things that we're doing, we weren't doing all of this when I just had little children. So my life looked very different. I wasn't doing all the things I do now. I was cooking from scratch, You know, I was taking care of a home, I was working a part-time job and all of that when I had just one child, but life was very different. And so that is, I guess, when people ask me that and they want advice on, you know, I'm overwhelmed. I have 3 little ones, you know, that are age 4 and under, and I feel like I can't get anything done. And I guess you have to have realistic expectations of yourself and your time, set goals that are appropriate for the stage of life that you're in. You know, the time to grow a bunch of food and have a massive garden might not be the time when you have so many little ones, and maybe that's a dream that you kind of need to put on hold until they grow up a little bit, or you have some older helpers to help you. But if you do want to still pursue some of those dreams, my biggest piece of advice is baby wearing. Get yourself a really good baby carrier. That is what allows me to get a lot of work done when I have small children. And yeah, that's about it. So yeah, our life looked very different. And speaking of Gabe, a lot of questions about his food allergies. So if you're new here, my oldest son, Gabriel, has anaphylactic allergies to dairy and peanuts. And a lot of people want to know, can't he have other types of milk? Have we ever tried goat milk or camel milk or anything like that? And he is allergic to all mammals' milk. A lot of people are like, how do you know that? Well, we've had him tested for goat milk and cow milk, and both of those he is allergic to. He had my breast milk fine when he was younger. He actually had it pumped for him in a cup until he was age 5 because he couldn't get milk, obviously, from other sources. So while I was nursing other babies, I would pump milk so that he could be getting the nutrition of the milk, since he couldn't have cow's milk. But at age 5, he started reacting even to my breast milk. So he can't even have human milk anymore. And at that point, we reached the conclusion that all mammals' milk he is allergic to. That is not an option for him. A lot of other people want to know, do any of the other children have food allergies? How would we know if they have those allergies if we don't allow those foods into our home? All of the other children have been exposed to those allergens outside of the house, whether it's with their grandparents at a restaurant or with cousins when they do sleepovers with their cousins and things. So all of the children, with the exception of my youngest son, Benjamin, I don't think has ever been exposed to peanut butter. So that is something that we need to try for him. But all the other children have been exposed to them and they are not allergic, which is miraculous because food allergies tend to run in families. So the fact that only my oldest has them and none of the 7 younger siblings have any anaphylactic allergies is miraculous, and I think has to do with the fact that my health changed a lot with all of the children after my oldest. And I think that my health while I was pregnant with him, my gut microbiome, a lot of issues like that are what caused his food allergies, unfortunately. But we're just grateful that the other children don't have to worry about that. A lot of other questions that I get are about desensitization. Have we thought about doing any of the trials for food allergies? And yes, I have been asking Gabriel for probably the last 5 years if that's something he's interested in. Would he like to try some of those therapies? I laid out all the literature for him. Every year we go over this again with him and we talk about what are the pros, what are the cons, what are the risks, what are the benefits. And I've left that up to him because he is the one that will have to deal with that. And he's been at a place up until this point where he was not interested in doing those therapies, but he is getting his driver's license this year and starting to branch out a little bit. He's starting college classes, maybe having a job outside of the home. And I think that the more he ventures out into the world, that might be something that he'll want to pursue. And that is totally his choice because with that choice, there are risks that can come. I've read stories of people going through some of the desensitization therapies and they have a permanent feeling in their tongue from being exposed to those allergens. You know, things like that like he would have to deal with for the rest of his life. And I want that to be his choice to do that. And so when he's ready, he'll pursue that. And I have a feeling, like I said, as he branches out into the real world a little more, that will be something that he will want to pursue. So we look forward to that. As I mentioned, he is starting college classes. He's doing them from home virtually for the first year or 2 at least, but he will be having to go to campus, and he's prepared. It was a whole different ball game when he was a small child, and we had to try to keep him safe out in environments where his allergens were present. Little children are constantly putting their hands in their mouth and in their eyes and in their nose and things, and that is how Gabriel tends to react if he touches surfaces that might have peanut butter residue or dairy protein or something on it, and then he were to touch any of those parts of his body, he will react. But now that he's older, he's just very trained now to not put his hands, anywhere like that, and to not touch surfaces, to make sure he's washing his hands and things. And it's a lot easier now. I thought I would be scared as a food allergy mom once he reached that point where he would be going out into the real world, but I actually have a lot of peace about it because he is a very smart child. He's a very, he's going to be okay. He'll take care of himself. He's been trained well. So that's about it for the food allergy questions. Another question was about the dogs. A lot of people want to know, what breed are they, and are they good around children? Also, if we had to train them, how did we do that to keep them so calm around the children? So our dogs, and I've mentioned this in previous videos, are a livestock guardian breed. They're kind of cousins to an Anatolian Shepherd. Anatolians, Kangals, and what we have, Baz Shepherds, they're all Turkish Shepherd dogs, but they're landrace breeds. In Turkey, where they're from, different regions have bred the dogs to have specific characteristics. So if you look at an Anatolian Shepherd compared to our Baz Shepherd, on the surface they look very similar, but the Baz is larger. It has a slightly different head shape and a body proportion. It's more square and boxy. And so that is what we have. It's a Turkish Baz Shepherd. We kind of fell in love with the breed. We were looking, in my last video, I actually showed you that we have lots of people on our road that let their very large dogs run loose. We have pit bulls, German shepherds, cane corsos. We learned that very soon after moving here, and so when we were researching breeds, we wanted a guardian dog here that would be bigger and more powerful than any of those wild dogs running around that could potentially confront our livestock or even be around our children. And so we chose the Baz Shepherd because there has been evidence of a Baz Shepherd even taking down wolves before. So that is why we really liked this breed. This breed has very natural predator drive, but it also is a good family dog. It's like a nanny dog. My children crawl all over them. They play with them. My dogs love my children, take such good care of them. But if they see a threat, they will go for it, and they are always working, always on alert. It's pretty amazing to watch. As far as training them, these guarding characteristics are innate to these breeds. That's why they're called livestock guardian dogs. There is a little bit of training in terms of like boundaries that you have to do, teaching them what your property boundaries are. There's also training that has to be done with chickens. We found with any dog, whether it's a livestock guardian dog or whatever, you never want to leave them unsupervised with chickens until they're out of the puppy stage, because dogs don't view chickens as livestock necessarily. They view them as like little squeaky toys that they want to chase and play with, and could potentially hurt if they play with too roughly. So there's no training that really has to be done with these dogs around actual livestock, calves or baby goats or anything like that. But when it comes to poultry, you just do want to do some training, teach them, not to play and chase the birds and things like that, just like you would with any puppy. But other than that, we taught our dogs how to sit and things like that. They're not rough with the children. They play with the kids. They love the kids. And, our male dog is 175 pounds, and he will just lay down and let my little ones, snuggle right up to him like a great big teddy bear. It's pretty neat. So those are our dogs. Another question, how do I deal with burnout? And yes, everybody gets burnout. My burnout in particular has to do with food preparation. As you can guess, with the severity of the food allergies that we're dealing with, I don't have the option to just order takeout on a day where I'm extremely exhausted. I don't have the option to go to a restaurant, fast food, none of that, because there is always the potential for cross-contamination that could harm my son. Yes, we could potentially send the whole family except for him out to a restaurant, but I would still need to prepare food for him, and that wouldn't be fair. So food is one of my big areas of burnout because I cook 3 meals a day, typically from scratch, 7 days a week. And so how do I deal with that? If I have seasons where that's happening, I will spend a little more money on some convenience items just to give myself a little bit of a break. It might mean buying store-bought bread that is dairy-free and peanut-free versus, making my bread from scratch all the time. It might mean buying some paper plates because the amount of dishes that I create cooking so much can be overwhelming. And if you add 10 people's plates to that mess, that can push you over the edge. And so just little things like that, those conveniences really do help me deal with burnout. In terms of burnout mentally over the load of the work that I have to do, I homeschool. This fall I will have 6 students in my homeschool, which is the maximum I will ever have, because by the time my oldest Gabe turns 18, or by the time my next youngest son reaches school age, Gabriel will be out of the house. So 6 students is the maximum I'll ever have, which is, it's weird to think I've reached that point, because I remember a time where that seemed so far in the future. But so I'm homeschooling 6 students. I'm cooking 3 meals a day from scratch. I'm using social media as a job for me that I also make time for documenting things for income for our family. We also manage Homestead. There's a lot, and I don't think it's physically. I'm naturally a pretty energetic person. I'm a goal setter. I like to work hard and achieve goals. It gives me a good feeling. So energy, physical energy often isn't the problem, but the mental load of how many plates I have spinning in the air and how much I'm just trying to juggle and keep track of, I can definitely feel mental burnout, particularly if I'm in a stage where I'm not sleeping a lot because of babies and things. So how do I deal with that mental burnout? The number one thing is a planner, having a good planner. And I'll link the planner I use in the description and a video about how I've set it up. This was a life-changing thing for me. Before I started using a planner in this way, keeping track mentally of everything that I had going on was so overwhelming. I feel like I was making myself sick. But having a place where it's all laid out and organized, that I can look for it there and keep track of everything, it's been a wonderful blessing. That really helps keep me from mentally being burned out. Another thing is nap time. Prioritizing nap time with my children is essential. Everybody that's age 5 and under is required to take a nap for a couple hours in the afternoon. They all are in the same room with me so that I can keep my eye on them and keep them down for a nap. If I put them in separate rooms and in their own beds, the older ones will pop up and down and naps aren't going to happen. But I put them all in the same room and we all kind of cuddle in together and they all fall asleep. Surprisingly, they all will. And I've never had an issue with a child not taking a nap if I'm there with them, rub their head to get them to sleep, sing them a lullaby, whatever. And then very rarely do I actually lay down and sleep with them. But I use that 2 hours of quiet time. The house is quiet. The little ones, aren't needing anything. And I can just breathe and I can pray. I can catch up on some, work that needs to be done, or I can just, mentally zone out for a little bit and let my brain rest. And then as soon as nap time's over, it'll all start back up again. But those are 2 things. Planning and having a good planner and prioritizing nap time are how I prevent mental burnout. Okay, speaking of homeschooling, a lot of requests for me to do a video on my homeschool curriculum, and I've done those in the past, and they tend to not be very popular videos, so I haven't wanted to waste your time making that. But if that's something you're interested in, if you follow me over on Instagram, I have highlights that show the curriculum that we are using for this year. We use an eclectic mix. There's not one specific company that we tend to use from kindergarten all the way through graduation. I have found different things work best for different grade levels. And honestly, I'm at the point now, I have such a diverse age range and such a diverse type of student and with different learning styles, that what worked for some of my older children might not be working for some of the younger ones now. So we're very flexible with our curriculum options. And like I said, if you really want to get a specific picture of what I use, I would check out Instagram. Just the short story I'll give you here, we're mostly at this point using Abeka for everyone that's in higher level of middle school all the way up through high school. I use a combination of Saxon Math, when children are younger, and I use teaching textbooks for math starting at grade 4 and up. I use something called My Father's World to teach my children how to read. And other than that, there's just little pieces of curriculum that are filled in here and there to teach all of the subjects. We do kind of a more laid back approach in the elementary school years where we focus mostly on reading, writing, and arithmetic, and then kind of unschool the rest. The rest is through life. We live on a homestead, so there's science all around us, and we just do life together, and that's how the children learn a lot. And then when they get to middle school, we start incorporating more of those other classes besides language arts and math. Things like history and science start to become a little more structured, so that by the time they're in high school, they are doing a full course load of all of the required subjects. And so far that method has worked well for us. My oldest son will turn 16 at the end of the summer, and like I said, he's starting college classes, so he feels very prepared with the methods that we've used so far, and that's just what works. We're in the state of Ohio. I know another common question I get is about how does it work with government oversight, and are my children required to do like yearly standardized tests to make sure they're at grade level? Every state in the United States has its own laws regarding homeschooling. Here in the state of Ohio, a typical homeschooler would be required to have a certified licensed teacher sign off on a portfolio of work and kind of assess the child every year to make sure they're working at grade level, or if they're not working at grade level, to make sure that they're not falling too far behind in things. That's typically how homeschooling works here in Ohio. There's another option if you don't want to have the standardized or the licensed teacher sign off on your work. You can opt to take standardized tests and submit those test scores. And as long as I believe you have like a 25% or higher or something, you're okay to continue homeschooling or something like that. So every state is different. I personally do my own assessments here. I have lists of academic outcomes that I expect my children to have by certain, stages of development and things, and I just sort of make sure they're hitting them. I'm less interested about my kids following a particular grade level as described by the public school system. I'm not expecting them, at age 10 they have to be at this point, and at age whatever. My goal is just that my children are following their own path, and I see it less of having these milestones set throughout and more of there's an end goal, and how we reach that goal doesn't really matter as long as we get there eventually. And so if that means some of my kids are a little later to start to read, that's fine with me. If some of my kids read a little earlier, that's great. In the end, both of those kids will reach the same goal. And so that's kind of the approach that we take, and it's been working great for us. I'm very excited for this school year. All of my curriculum is bought and organized. I'm working on laying out the year. In the past, we have not taken summer breaks, and we have schooled year-round, just taking breaks as needed, but things change. Life changes a lot in every new season. And I'm finding with older kids who are teenagers, the amount of work that they do, the mental load for them is so high now with so much coursework that they almost need a summer break in order to prevent burnout. And so this is going to be our first year that we are going to school on a traditional school schedule, so that next year they can have a traditional summer. So we're really excited to try that. This is the stage of parenting I'm in. I have an almost 16-year-old and a 14-year-old and a 12-year-old. And for the first time, I'm really feeling like I'm having to reevaluate, things. It's like this whole new stage of parenting where maybe what worked when they were all little isn't necessarily serving us so well. And I think one of the keys to being successful in both homeschooling and in parenting a large family are remaining flexible and adapting to all the changes that come as the children reach new developmental milestones. And it always keeps you on your toes, it's it's fun. So this has been a year of growth for us, and just learning how we need to adapt for people that are getting driver's licenses and taking college classes and, wanting more social outlets. I have one child who has expressed a desire to be in a co-op this year, a homeschool co-op, which is where families kind of come together and the children are more in a traditional classroom setting. Parents take turns teaching classes, and we're considering being in one that meets once a week for my daughter, who has an expressed a desire for a little more social interaction throughout the week. And that's something that we wouldn't have considered several years ago. But as kids grow up, they have different needs, and we're just learning to roll with the punches. Speaking of that, like postpartum update, a lot of people have questions. How are things going with Hannah, having your 8th baby? How is all of that going? And I would have said the last couple babies, when I added baby number 5, baby number 6, baby number 7, what's another one? It's no different, really. And it felt that way. Having 5 kids really felt no different than having 6 or having 7. This has been the first time adding a baby since probably having my first 2 where it felt like a pretty extreme transition. And it has nothing to do with Hannah and everything just to do with the season of life that we're in with teenagers and how I'm having to grow and adapt in different ways in order to meet the needs of the older children, while also still being stuck in this season of life with babies and nursing and diapers and all of that. And so that has been the hardest part of having my 8th baby, is just I guess they call it straddle parenting, and figuring out how to parent both of those age ranges on top of everything in between, and to meet everybody's needs really well. And I obviously love a challenge, or else I wouldn't have 8 children and be doing all the things that I'm doing. And so it's been fun. I've had to grow and learn and really work on my patience and things myself, and it's pushed me in ways that I didn't anticipate. But I love it. Having teenagers is wonderful. Don't let anyone lie to you and tell you teenagers are awful. Teenagers are great. It is so fun to watch these children become their own people, and to be able to express their own opinions on things, so you can sit down and actually have a conversation with them where you're taking as much as you're giving, and it's just this beautiful thing. And now I'm watching my oldest son, his dreams and his goals for life are starting to become a reality, with him picking a career path and kind of, setting in motion the steps to reach that goal. It's a beautiful, wonderful thing, while also still being firmly in this stage of, little baby, and life seems so new, and all of that other stuff is just so far in the future that it's really neat. And then to watch the older children interact so tenderly with, their youngest sibling, it's just, what a wonderful thing. So, but it is a challenge because a lot of people don't speak to this type of parenting. There aren't a lot of people out there that are dealing with teenagers and babies, or adult children and babies at the same time. This is a unique, large family problem a lot of the time. And there aren't a lot of resources out there and people talking about the challenges that type of parenting presents. And so it can feel kind of lonely. And I'm glad that social media has put me in contact with a lot of other mothers that are going through the same thing. And it's just been so great to get to, pick their brains and talk to them about some of the unique issues with that type of situation. So we're doing well. And Hannah is 6 months old. She's sitting up. She is starting to eat some solid foods like broth. And we're going to be working, broth isn't a solid food, but it's the first step into eating solid foods. We're going to start doing some eggs here coming up, and it's just so fun watching her grow. And I think because at the same time I have a child who's starting to, he's going to be driving, and has one foot out the door to leaving the nest here soon, that it makes me savor what's happening with Hannah as a baby that much more, and to just cherish it, because I know how fleeting it is. And I'm going to blink and she's going to be in the same situation, getting her driver's license and potentially going off to college. So it's really, she's sweet. She's a wonderful baby, and we are really blessed to have her. So, all right, I'm going to wrap this up. I didn't get to all the questions that I wanted to because I'm very verbose. I do not know how to be succinct. So sorry for the rambling. But the last thing I wanted to address, because I've had a lot of questions about how the Cellar project is going, and we're actually meeting with the excavators tonight. As you guys know, we had our whole cellar, like the foundation. We live in a over 150-year-old farmhouse. It's pretty old, and the foundation needed some serious work done on it. Our cellar was very wet, and so it was unusable space. It's basically this empty space sitting under our rather small house being unused. And so the focus on this project was to waterproof all of that. They had to excavate and expose all of the walls of the cellar. They waterproofed them. They tiled the water so that everything now is being pulled away from the house, and now the cellar is bone dry. It is wonderful, but the excavators didn't want us really doing anything permanent with the cellar yet because they wanted to make sure that it was working. We wanted to have a couple good rains happen to make sure that the cellar would stay dry before we start, painting walls and fixing things up down there in case they have to do more work. And unfortunately, then we went over a month without any rain, so it was hard to see if it really was working. But since then, we've had some good rains, and it's still dry down there, so we think that what they have done is working. We're meeting with them to just talk about whether it's okay for us to move ahead with our plans. The next step for us, the work that we're going to do, we need to clean it up because it is, there's cobwebs and dust and everything down there. It's just been this unused space for many years. We're going to clean it up. We are going to paint it with a waterproofing sealing paint and a nice white paint so that it's bright down there because it is an old cellar. Adam is going to rig up some lights. He's going to wire some lighting down there so that it's a little brighter for me when I want to go down there. And then the next step will be moving shelving down for our canned goods. That's phase 1 that we're hoping to accomplish by canning season this year, so that when I start refilling these shelves, I will be doing it downstairs. Then the next phase of the project that I want to do is we want to have a dumbwaiter. We don't know if we're going to build it or if we're going to have somebody else build it, but a dumbwaiter from we have access to the cellar in a closet underneath our stairs in our house. And so what we want to do is create a dumbwaiter right there so that when I go down into the cellar, I can fill that dumbwaiter with all of the groceries and things that I want to bring up, and we could come back upstairs and just pull it upstairs so that I don't have to, A, lug things back and forth, in my arms when I'm coming up and down out of the cellar, or B, the other option would be to build a staircase down into the cellar, but that would take up square footage in, the small cellar space. So we think a dumbwaiter is the best option. That's phase 2. Hopefully we'll get to that this fall. And then phase 3 is we're building a cold room in a corner of the cellar. That's all on Adam. I can't really help with that. I'm not handy with building things. And so when we're going to accomplish that just really depends on when Adam's schedule clears up enough. He has several other projects on his honey-do list that I'm trying to get him to do too this summer. There just aren't enough hours in the day, for everything that we want to do. But there will be a cold room in the back of the cellar. We already have airflow to that cold room. There's an old coal chute that was original to the house that has access, to the air outside. And so we'll run the pipe down in there so that we can temperature control that cold room. And hopefully we can have that done by, maybe October or November, because that's when we, start storing things like apples and a lot of our root vegetables and things that we would like to be able to store down there this year. It's a big dream, hoping it all happens this year, but if not, I will be happy if we just get phase 1 done and I can get all of my canning down there in a place that's a little cooler, that, is dark so that it's not exposed to all of this light, and it'll be dry finally. So that's how the cellar project is going, and I will definitely take you guys along on that when we begin working on that project. All right, guys, that's all I have for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. I like I mentioned, I try to get to all of your comments when you leave them. I appreciate all of you interacting and commenting on my videos. It is a blessing to me, and I love to hear your feedback. But sometimes I leave those questions sitting there with the intention of coming back later so that I can give you a thoughtful response and type it out. But life gets busy, and I never end up coming back to it, and so I just wanted to clear up some of those common questions I get that I hadn't answered in the comments. So hopefully you enjoyed this. We'll be back on Sunday with another meals video from the 3 Rivers Challenge. Until then, I hope you're having a wonderful week, and I'll see you later. Bye.